Hello, this is the world premiere of Civil Discourse Now, a panel discussion in which we will be talking about various topics related to local, state, national, and international politics and social issues. My name is Mark Small. I'm an attorney here in Indianapolis. My co-host for this show, sitting to my left but right politically, is Paul Ogden. And we are bringing you this show from Big Hat Books in Broad Ripple, Indiana. Big Hat is an excellent retailer of books. Our panelists with us today are, to my right, but certainly not politically in any meaningful sense, Bill Levin, who's, amongst other things, a candidate for City County Council here in Indianapolis. And to my far right, and that is accurate, is Jeff Cox, who's also an Indianapolis attorney. Paul?
Thank you, Mark. This show, Civil Discourse Now, I think is a long-needed attempt to bring a good forum to talk about local, national, state issues, as well as international issues. That is something that's missing in our community. There are a few shows that try it. They tend to be rather bland. We want to have an intellectual show that is also interesting to people, that people will want to view. And I certainly applaud Mark for his efforts. I know when he came up with this idea for a show, I thought, Mark, that's on the cutting edge of technology. That's where TV is going in the future, and this is a great opportunity. And it's surprising it came from Mark, who tends to be less innovative. I'm kidding, Mark. But I do thank you for bringing this show to Indianapolis and to the state and to the nation.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate laudatory remarks. I like them a lot. We're going to discuss two topics today. These are local topics and state topics, but they have national implications. The first has to do with a contract that the City of Indianapolis entered into for its parking meters being operated. It's a 50-year lease. I'm going to be, I think, the lone voice on this panel arguing that it is a good lease. I will be quite frank, my name is not Frank, in saying that I have been really hard-pressed to find some arguments for it. That's going to take up the first two segments of our show. The last two segments will concern the state of Indiana's exemptions that have been given for online retailers, such that those retailers, if they're out-of-state LLCs, do not have to pay, or collect rather, sales tax on items that they sell over the internet from distribution centers here in Indiana. That being said, I want to go to the parking meter. The parking meters, and this is about a 50-year lease the state of Indiana entered into with a company called ACS.
City.
Oh, I'm sorry. We were trying to take over everything. I apologize. It's an age thing. City of Indianapolis entered into with ACS. It's 50 years. The city got some money up front. $20 million, and it's for 50 years. There are several things about it that are difficult to describe. It's a 155-page contract. There is people are not allowed to audit the books. There's no outside audit allowed of ACS's books. Now, I'm going to argue why it is that this is a really spiffy, neat contract, and there are several reasons. One is, if you are a board member or shareholder of ACS, this is an excellent contract. Secondly, if you're a politician who occupies office here in the city of Indianapolis, you're able to take this money up front for a lease on assets of the city and pay off debts and plug holes on the budget right now and then lay those problems off on the future generations. That's an easy thing. So it's good for the politicians in the city who are incumbents. It's good for people who don't own cars and don't park downtown because they don't have to worry about paying money anyplace. The people, and I read the, well, it's true. I read the former,
okay, go ahead.
Former Mayor Steve Goldsmith, who was mayor of this city and no longer is, came up with an interesting expression in an article talking about Chicago's parking meter mishap as a successful fiasco, because Chicago did a 75-year gig, got $1 billion up front, and then spent it all. And the meters don't work. People were vandalizing meters. They were filling them up with pennies, and there was no law against it. They were filling them up with pennies so that people couldn't put quarters in, and so people couldn't get ticketed. A lot of really innovative things. But here's what Goldsmith says. Whenever the capitalization of an asset occurs, citizens should be wary if only half the proceeds go to if only half go to operating deficits. After all, the structural deficits do not vanish, but the ability to monetize the asset again does. What is he saying?
I don't know, say it again.
Okay, he's saying whenever the capitalization of an asset occurs, which I think that means whenever you're going to sell something.
And you're going to make a profit?
Well, no, just
capitalization of an asset.
You're not only selling the asset, you're selling the income stream from the asset.
Yes.
So it's talking about selling the damn thing. Whenever you're going to sell it, and it doesn't say for a profit, just sell it. Citizens should be wary if the city half devotes, the printout was bad, if the city half devotes proceeds to filling operating deficits.
I think what he's saying is, and actually I don't necessarily disagree with the whole privatization of the meters, but what he's saying is when you sell the meters and get your cash up front, don't put it into the operating fund.
Yes.
I think that's what he's saying, which I agree, and they did that in Chicago, and that's the problem.
Well, no, actually, in Chicago, they spent all of it on operating expenses.
Right.
I mean, they took $1 billion, but see, and that's another aspect of the city of Chicago's deal. Employment today is a difficult problem. Jobs. The mayor up there, Richie Daley, would have been unemployed after he left the office of mayor, but he was hired by the law firm that negotiated the parking meter contract.
I want to ask a question here. Was what you were trying to do here actually intended to be a defense of the ACS parking lot? Because you know, that was probably the most backhanded defense I've ever seen.
It wasn't,
but I got to compliment. But yeah.
Thank you.
Bill, what your party would say, some say, in defense of this, is that it's always better to have the private sector run things than government. Not all libertarians make that argument, but some do.
No, I believe if it is a profitable thing for the private industry to do, and it is not a taxation to the city, yeah. But if we're going to be giving developer welfare like we are generously handing out everywhere, you know, they got to have the reins pulled in. This is I'm sorry, I'm going to give you something to make money off of my company for the next 50 years, and I don't care to see your books. That's fucked up.
Well, see, let me. I want to respond to what Jeff so crudely accused me of just a few moments ago. I did say at the outset that if you are a shareholder of ACS or otherwise materially benefit from this contract, it is good for you.
It is.
If you are a taxpayer of this city or county, it is not. But yeah,
they own the parking meter ticket guys. They own the parking garages,
and
they own the tow services. This is a little bit of what you might call a monopoly.
Well, if Tony Soprano were running it, it would be called an environmental waste management system.
We need Tony Soprano. We got the city county one.
That's true. But no, the Denison Parking, which is one of the partners in ACS, owns parking garages downtown. Now, one of the arguments from this guy on the Reason Foundation.
Mark, our viewers may not know. Let me give us a little detail on what the parking contract does.
That's a good idea.
It's a 50-year contract. They put in there provisions where we could get out of it every 10 years. However, if you look at those provisions, you never find a vendor that would take over the contract. It's impossible. The vendor taking over the contract, for example, would have to take the same income that ACS made off the contract in 2010, which I'm not sure how they would do that because the contract didn't go into effect in 2011. Still, a vendor in 2030 is not going to take the same income you took in 2011.
Could the city take it back during those 10-year windows?
In the 10-year windows, they can take it back, but there's limitations on that in terms of how much money. In fact, I think they're not allowed to make any money at all. It was something very unreasonable.
The city's not allowed to make money off of it.
Right.
It's like getting out of an AT&T contract.
Right. So it's a 5-year contract. And the way it's structured is it is set up so that we get $20 million up front versus $1 billion for Chicago. ACS, or I should say Park Indy, they created a new entity to run the parking meters. They get 70% of all the money that's generated from the parking revenue. City of Indianapolis gets 30%. They get 70%. Now, when income reaches a certain threshold, it becomes 60-40 in favor of the city.
$585,000
a month. But the way they have it structured, they have it adjusted for inflation, so that will continue to go up. So we will never actually hit the 60-40 split. It will always be 37. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the $20 million up front. One of the arguments is that it was a risk that ACS or Park Indy took the risk. These new meters would have cost $8 to $10 million. We spent $10 million on painting bike lanes. So
that no one wanted?
That no one wanted, exactly. So I don't think there really was a risk. People aren't going to stop parking. They're not really assuming a risk. But I just want to give a background on what the contract is like.
That's a good background. And another provision is that these income figures are based upon numbers that ACS or whatever entity was created therefrom self-reports. So that's like if we're playing poker and you have 2 pair and you lay down your cards, I say, I've got 3 of a kind, that's too bad, and I rake in the money. The only problem is instead of being able to walk away from the table freely, you're locked in on the contract with me. Because I'm ACS, you have to pay me off to get out of the game. And again, I think that's a benefit for ACS and its shareholders. That's why I think I'm arguing for the thing. But when you have a percentage that's based upon the books, you have to have a provision where the books are open, or else we're trusting the same entity that co-bungled the welfare privatization here in Indiana with ABM. Also, IBM was really the bad party in that because that's what ACS says. But you have to trust these corporate entities, and I think that in this parking agreement, we have somebody who's exemplary because they've said that in their feasibility study, they said they could do it. And we had, was it 2 bidders? Did we have any bidders?
I think we have more than 2. I think we're about 7 or 8.
Well, I'd love to have a contract like this, but hey, I don't have any ends on the city county.
You use the term bid.
Yeah.
Whenever I hear the term bid, I think of a closed bid, but that term now is used for contracts that aren't bid out, as that term is traditionally used. They don't have to take the lowest bidder on the parking contract, and they did. They can take whichever one they think is best. It's RFP, I think, RFQ. People in the city understand those terms.
And we're right at the end of our first segment.